I am 7 over this shit. What's it going to take for people to realize this stuff is real? I'm talking, of course, about psychic phenomena.
The world thinks we're crazy for believing it, but people like you and I, we can see the truth. We look out at the world and we know it's the world that's crazy. It's all up. And because you and I can see through it, we look crazy. And that's, my little pretty, is the great irony.
Hello, and welcome back to Idea Shacks, where we take an analytical lens to mysticism and spirituality. My name is Kiara, and today we are going to continue a tumble down the rabbit hole of psychic phenomena. We have been talking a lot about the science of... I don't know how to put beanies on. We have been talking a lot about the science of psi, how it is that these things are studied in laboratories, right? Precognition, clairvoyance, remote viewing, telepathy. But what good is it if we know these things exist and can study them in labs if we can't apply them to our everyday lives? Remember our friend Cleve Baxter, who proved that humans are telepathically connected to plants?
Hello, friend.
I think that's so exciting, like first plant to man, but then man to man. It would be so convenient if I didn't have to use my words, but I could just think them at you. But maybe that's just me, because the mainstream said to Cleve, even if it's real, who cares? And I'm sorry, Cleve, but they're kind of right. Most people don't care if their basil plant knows it's loved. I care, but I don't think most people do. So let's talk about the practical applications. For example, how could we use psi for survival? That's a helpful application, right? Not dying. And I think it's a relevant use case because throughout history, we have all these different stories, documented cases of people, and sometimes groups of people, who received precognitive dreams, and they didn't do anything about it, so they died. Famous examples being the Titanic and 9/11. We're going to cover both of those. We're also going to talk about Aberfan, right? This Welsh village where people dreamed of a natural disaster decimating that town months in advance of the actual event. And today we're going to be talking about Abraham frickin' Lincoln. Did you know that Mr. Lincoln, President Lincoln, dreamed his own assassination, announced it to his inner circle just 5 hours before the actual event? True story, bro. This freaking book, this is Psychic Literacy by Ingo Swan, and I really do think it should be required reading, okay? Required reading for the new world. Ingo provides such an interesting perspective on psychic phenomena because he was born a master psychic and he was involved in the laboratories with the CIA in the 70s. And so you get this really unique intersection where on one hand, he was born in the crazy. On the other hand, he was also very much involved in the science. Best thing I've read in literal years, and I'm probably not gonna shut up about this book for a while. But today, we're just gonna hone in on one section of this bad boy, wardrobe change. A few days before Abraham Lincoln was shot, he had a dream of an out-of-body glimpse into his own future. He confided to his wife and his friend, Ward Lamon, that he wandered from room to room in the White House. The building was empty, but from every room came the sound of sobbing. In the East Room, he saw a catafalque? Catafalque, okay. I learned a word today. A decorated wooden framework supporting the coffin. I knew it had to do with coffins of a distinguished person during a funeral, or while lying in state. In the East Room, he saw a catafalque in which lay a corpse clothed in funeral vestments. Surrounding the soldiers on guard was a throng of weeping mourners. In this dreamlike, out-of-body state, the president asked the soldiers, "Who lies dead in the White House?" "The president," they answered. "He was assassinated." The afternoon before he was shot in 1865, Lincoln's cabinet entered the council room for a meeting to find the president seated at the table, his head buried in his hands. As they entered, he looked up. "Gentlemen," he said, "before long you will have some important news." "Have you had bad news, Mr. President?" one asked. "I have heard nothing, but last night, again, I had a dream. I was in a boat, alone. I had no oars, No rudder. I was helpless in a boundless sea. Yes, gentlemen, perhaps tomorrow, perhaps in a few hours, you will have important news. Lincoln was assassinated 5 hours later. Dun dun dun! Does this mean when we have these experiences that we are fated, that we are doomed? No. Calm your titties, okay? God ain't evil. Law number 1 of the universe. The universe is a fundamentally friendly place. Okay, so why? Why would Lincoln and other people have these visions of death, of their death? Real simple. So you could choose a different path, Abraham. All you had to do was not go to the theater. It was in his astrology too, but that's idea sex for another time. Let's end on a happy note. Ingo Swan did use his abilities to successfully avoid dying. When he was just a wee little tyke, he had an awful nightmare that he was suddenly engulfed in flames, and so he ran to his parents' bedroom and he woke them up and he was inconsolable, and they couldn't console him until they took him to Grandma's house. He insisted. He was like, I'm not going back to bed. We have to leave. We're going to Grandma's. And so they get up in the middle of the night and they go to Grandma's. Fast forward a few hours later, and his older brother, is parked out front of the house, macking with his girlfriend, when suddenly the house erupts in flame. Thankfully, all of the residents were at Grandma's house, or getting laid in the VW bug. In his book, Ingo writes that psychic fatalism, right, is hogwash. In other words, when we have these experiences of perceiving the future, it's not because it is set in stone. It is because it is a current trajectory that can be avoided. We essentially have an innate psychic alert system, is what this would indicate if this shit is real, okay? Did you know that the load factor of the 4 planes hijacked during 9/11 was just 31%? An abnormal number of people did not show up to their flights that day. And if it was one plane, we could chalk it up to like coincidence, but all 4 is pretty telling. And they may not have had like actual dreams about it, but an intuitive hunch, right? Psi happens on a spectrum, but the fact that those planes were so oddly empty tells us something. And in fact, there was a man named W.E. Cox who investigated train crashes in the 1950s. And what he found is that on days when trains crashed and people died, they were abnormally devoid of passengers. And he even calculated for things, it was like accounted for and accounted for things like bad weather. So to all who think the fact that we can talk to plants isn't important, here's what Ingo has to say. I believe it is time to say one thing further. Those who do not believe in psychic phenomena, and especially those who actively fulminate against researching them, are retrogressive life avoiders of the worst sort and should be cast into the sewers, along with the polluters, animal murderers, warmongers, and their ilk. Holy shit, escalated quickly. My God, Mr. Swan, tell us what you really think. This man is fucking feisty. I love him. What he's saying is that we're dumb. So very, very dumb. In the same way that killing each other and destroying the planet is dumb, so is, as he says, actively fulminating against the research of psychic phenomena. Because, you know, there's always the question, is it real, is it not? I think there's enough evidence that we should at least be investigating this seriously, because if it is real, this represents our greatest untapped potential as a species. Imagine if there was a psychic alert system, a premonition registry of some sort. I know it sounds ridiculous, okay? But the fact that this exists is ridiculous, and we need to stop like confining ourselves to our limited little box of what we think reality is, because it's obviously not accurate, and we are doing ourselves a massive disservice by actively fulminating against researching these things. And look, don't take my word for it. Like, the science is out there, the stories are out there. You can have the direct experience of these things. You know, I'm just an idiot on the internet, and that's all. But next week, this idiot on the internet is going to be talking about the sinking of the Titanic and how dozens of people dreamed that it would happen, had visions of it happening. Some people just jumped overboard as it was docked and about to leave. Shit gets wild. So next week we're going to be talking about the Titanic, yet another example of how we could have used precognition in order to avert disaster. And we're just doing ourselves the biggest disservice by not even entertaining these things as a possibility, right? Like, imagine being able to avoid the next 9/11, and all we need is some kind of like psychic alert system, the ability to crowdsource people's dreams, a premonition registry, if you will. But that's idea sex for another time. So thank you for having idea sex with me today, and until next time, stay very, very blessed.
Alrighty then. I think that works.